You are listening to What's Next? Conversations with Boomers, and I'm Barb Desmarais, your host. Are you a boomer who really enjoys travel and you're a single boomer and you do not have a travel partner, but you want to travel and not necessarily travel to meet somebody? I have my friend Kelley Riley with me, and Kelley's been on before. Actually, it was 4 years ago, and we had an episode called Thriving After the Death of Your Spouse, and Kelley definitely is thriving. She's got a very full and interesting life, and part of that big life is a ton of travel. So, Kelley, welcome to the podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you, Barb.
It's really good to see you. And I know you've recently returned from yet another trip. So I want to, first of all, share how we know each other. So when I was, after about a year of being a widow, I was really wanting to meet other people around my age who were also widowed and had also been married for decades. I couldn't find a group, so I started one myself. And that's where I met Kelley. And she was in the same position. And here we are all these years later.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great.
Absolutely. And still friends.
Yeah. Still friends. And I feel blessed because, I've made friends with you and Jennifer, and it's been lovely. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we are going to focus on your amazing travel. So the first thing I want to ask you is, you do what's called solo travel versus single travel. So tell us what that is. What's a solo traveler?
Okay, so us solo travelers tend to be quite fussy about what we're called. And we prefer not to be called singles travelers. Solo travel means someone who has chosen to travel on their own. Singles travelers, we all feel, and we're quite, universal in this. We all kind of feel that singles travel indicates something else. Like maybe we're looking for hookups, or we're looking for singles, or that it's a different kind of modus operandi than what we, are adopting. Solo travels are just people that have chosen to travel on their own. And that doesn't mean that we don't meet lots and lots of people on our solo travels. And I've made just the most wonderful friends over the years. So yeah, that's the distinction between the two, solos and singles.
It does have a different implication for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Singles, as soon as you hear that word, that's a hookup thing. And I guess, for a lot of people, that is what they're looking for. But if it's not what you're looking for, this is what you want to do. And I'm wondering, do you meet couples or people that actually did meet on as a solo traveler and without intending to?
Well, interestingly, I've been solo traveling now since 2016. My husband died in 2015, and he and I used to travel a lot together. And I really had a good sit down with myself and said, okay, is this the end of my travel life? Or what do I want to do from here? So I decided that I was going to travel on my own. So that started in 2016. So I've actually been at it for quite a while now. I have definitely met a few people, and I would say a few, like only a handful of people on my solo travels that actually met while solo traveling themselves and have now become a couple. It's actually quite unusual.
I'm not surprised because that isn't the intention, and people are obviously not putting out that vibe that I'm here to meet somebody.
Mm-hmm. In a romantic way.
Right.
I
That's
mean,
that's
I
what I mean.
think,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
No
in
flirting.
in all cases, all of the friends I've met and all of the friends I continue to meet each time I travel, um, we're all open to meeting new people and, developing new friendships. But for some reason, the romance aspect doesn't really enter into it as much as people might think it does. And it's more like a true friendship. And yeah, so interestingly enough, I have been, as you know, solo cruising a lot and I particularly choose cruise lines that cater to solo travel. So what that means is they usually have organized events for solo travelers, regular daily meetups. They organize dinners for the solo folks, and they also have events that you can do together, like going to the shows and things like that. So I choose the cruise lines that actually cater to that, because I'd prefer to give my money to companies that are marketing directly to solos. And
Mhm.
so consequently, when I do go on these cruises, there are usually a lot of solos. I can tell you the last cruise I went on, there was over 100 solos uh,
Really?
on the ship. And so you can imagine the first day when we have our first meetup, which is just literally a meet and greet, say your name, where you're from, etc. They were sort of struggling to find a venue to fit us all.
Wow. Is that the most you've ever encountered? The largest
Yes,
group of
although
solos?
I do know of other people that have gone on cruises that were larger than that, larger groups than that. But that's the largest I've experienced. But it's great when there's that many because,
Yeah,
not, let's face it, Barb, not everybody is your cup of tea. And
true.
so when you have 100 people to choose from,
Yeah.
you end up just kind of, it's quite organic, and you kind of end up just kind of naturally, you know, gravitating towards some people that you feel maybe are part of your tribe. And that seems to be sort of the way that it works for me. And I usually end up finding 5 or 6 people to pal around with,
Which is
for the
plenty.
the length of the cruise. And but having said that, we also are very independent. We all have our own rooms, of course, and we choose to do some things on our own. We choose to do some things with the group. And so there's a lot of freedom involved in doing solo travel.
I like that aspect of it because sometimes, you do want to do things on your own. You want to be with a group, but you also want time alone in your room or time to wander around by yourself,
Mhm.
as well as meeting other people. I'm curious, Kelley, is there an equal mix of men and women, or do you find that it's mostly women?
Okay, absolutely not an equal mix. I can tell you that.
Absolutely not. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Majority are women. I would say probably the ratio is around, when I first started in 2016, I would say the ratio was like something crazy, like 90% women, 10% men. Now it's shifted somewhat. There's a lot more single men traveling now as solo travelers. But it's still, I would say the ratio is something like 60% women, 40% men, if that,
Well, a
if
lot
that.
more than 90-10.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been like in the last 8 years. It's definitely become much more popular with men.
Why do you think that is that we women seem to be okay with traveling solo versus men? They don't tend to do it as much. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think we tend to be a bit more independent. And I think once the men try it, they're fine with it. But, getting them going and getting them to book their cruise and all that kind of thing, I think is where their hesitation is. And yeah, and a lot of them, there are some men that travel with a buddy, a male buddy,
Yeah.
and they are still considered solos. They would
Yeah,
still
yeah.
both, if they're both solo, they would still come to to the meetings and yeah. And then also interestingly, there are a lot of men and women that are solo travelers that are married.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you because in lots of times in a couple, one really wants to travel and the other does not. So this is also an opportunity for those people because they're obviously not looking to hook up either, at least most.
No, they're
Um,
married.
but yeah, it gives, I mean, there's a number of reasons. Either they're not interested or the other person isn't, does no longer has the ability to travel. So do you come across a lot of people like that?
Yes. So like for instance, in the last cruise I was on, there was about six of us that palled around together, and two of them were actually married. One man, one woman. And in both cases, the their spouses weren't interested in going on cruises. They weren't interested in that form of travel. One of them actually apparently gets horribly seasick, so she was definitely out
Oh,
of the mix. But she was perfectly happy for him to go. And this is what I found is that those um, men and women that are married that I've met on cruises, their spouses are fine with them going. There's obviously a lot of trust. I mean, you know, when you get into the 60s and 70s and you've been together for 30 or 40 years, hopefully a lot of trust is built up. And there's a lot of trust, and both of them felt really comfortable coming on their own. Although I think secretly they would have preferred it if they were with their spouses, but they knew that if they waited for that, it was never going to happen. So they just took the leap and off they went, and it was obviously clear within their relationships that it was fine. So yeah, it was a win-win situation.
I think that's fabulous.
It was really neat. Yeah.
Well, because, in a relationship, you don't ever want to be held back from doing things that you love because your partner does not like
Mm-hmm.
doing them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If and yeah, how wonderful to have a spouse that said, I don't want to go, but you go and enjoy yourself. And I don't want to use the word permission because we don't like to use that word
Right.
between a couple, but you have my blessing, you have my
Mm-hmm.
support. You go and enjoy yourself. I think that's really neat. Okay, so Kelley, you've been on many, many solo cruises, and I love following them on Facebook because here I am in wherever, all over the Bahamas. Here I am in Barbados. Here I am in. What are some of your favorites?
Well, I've kind of developed a sort of a passion for warm weather itineraries. I have to say that
How odd
because
of you, Kelley.
yeah, because we have, pretty gross winters and lots of rain in British Columbia where we are. And so I like to escape. I'm not interested in traveling in the summer because it's just so beautiful here in the summer. So I
Mhm.
tend to go away in either November, January, or February. Those are the worst months here. And yeah, and I have been over the last, I would say 6 or 7 years, have kind of developed into picking warm weather itineraries. So I like the Mexico, the Caribbean. I particularly like the Panama Canal cruises. I think they're quite interesting. They go through Central America, and yeah, so those are, I guess, I would say those are my favorites right now. Although I have done Europe and I have done British Isles, I have done Norway and Iceland, and also enjoyed those as well. But the weather wasn't as great.
Is there a cruise line that you tend to stick with?
I do. Should I mention it or?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I always pick Norwegian Cruise Lines, and they have itineraries all over the world, and they particularly cater to solo travelers. So
Oh, oh.
there will always be a solo meeting every day. It will be listed in the daily itinerary that they publish. and they have one staff member that they designate per cruise to be the solo coordinator. And so that person shows up at the meetings, uh, does the icebreakers, does the activities to kind of get people, out of their shell and to know each other. And that person will also organize the solo dinners and the solo events, like going to the theater or whatever. So, yeah. And so I don't think a lot of the other cruise lines have specifically designated solo coordinators. So I really like that. And of course, now because I've gone on so many cruises, and of course, they have loyalty clubs. And
Oh,
now I have, of course, gained a lot of points where I get a bunch of free stuff now.
so
Takes a
what kind of
while
free
to get
stuff?
there, but I get free laundry and free dinners and a free bottle of wine and
Oh,
things like that. Yeah, because of my status with them, because I've taken so many. So it's like any other kind of loyalty club that you would join, um, where you really, kind of build up your status, and it works on points. And so many points depending on the number of days of the cruise. And then occasionally they'll have promotions where they either double up or triple up on points. So you can watch for those. And I basically have a fantastic travel agent who is also a solo traveler. I met her on my solo cruises. She lives in Windsor, Ontario, and she does everything electronically. But she keeps an eye on all these promotions for me, so I can kind of double up on points or triple up on points if needed.
and it seems, Kelly, that usually you're gone for about 2 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, I prefer the longer cruises. It's kind of a big deal to get yourself all organized on a plane, packed for 7 day cruise now. That's the way I kind of feel. So I've been tending to go with 14 to 21 day cruises when I do go. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that seems worthwhile.
Yeah, and the cost of flying to those places has really increased a lot over the last couple of years. So again, it's just means that, you can take longer trips.
And where do you usually start your cruise?
Well, it varies. Mainly New York, Miami, or Galveston, Texas was the last one.
Oh,
Yeah, so and Los Angeles. Those are the four hubs that they usually
okay.
go from. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, people listening to this are going to be thinking, I've never been on a cruise before. This sounds like a lot of fun. How much does it cost?
Well, the prices vary. It is more expensive to travel on your own because they have what they call single supplements. And so sometimes it won't actually be the cost of two people, but sometimes it will be like, say, 150% of the single amount. That's what they call a single supplement. So I might be paying for two people, or I might be paying for one and a half people. So um, I would say, as a ballpark, for about a 14-day cruise, you're probably looking at about $2,500.
Okay.
All,
Okay.
but of course
I just know
that's
people
all
listening are
in.
just
Yeah, that's all in. So that's your cruise, your drink package, your food, etc. It doesn't include your flights.
right. But
Hmm.
everything on the cruise is included in that cost.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And so, and you've certainly made a lot of friends on these trips, haven't you?
It is just amazing how many friends I've made. And what happens is we tend to sometimes create a WhatsApp group while we're on the cruise of, like, the last one, for instance, there was six of us that were palling around together. We created our own WhatsApp group just to communicate with each other, which worked really well. And we've continued it on since coming home, which is really nice. But also basically through Facebook is how I keep in touch with everybody.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have made friends all over the world now.
I'm sure.
It's
Yeah, you've
it's
been on
great.
so many. So you tend to do cruises. Are there other solo packages that are not cruises, like
Absolutely.
tours?
Yeah, there's lots of tour groups. There's one in particular called Road Scholar, which tends to be a more in educational type trips, and they don't go on cruises, they do land tours. So the way they distinguish it is really between land tours and cruises, right? So land tours would be getting on and off of buses, staying in different hotels every night, um, having guided commentary wherever you're going, etc. And they also, Road Scholar is a good one. There's also several different, Gate One is another one I've heard of. Different groups that you can go and as a solo traveler. And, they usually limit to about maybe 12 or 14 people. And so some, maybe solos, you can check into that and see. Typically, are they only couples or are there some solos?
Mhm.
But even if they're mainly solos, mainly couples, they will definitely welcome you. I know that. And the other thing that I find traveling, I've done it on my own. In 2016, I did a 2-month trip on my own by land
Two
to
months.
Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And that was like a really big deal. And I found that when I travel on my own, and I don't know if you found this as well, but people tend to talk to you when you're on your own, more so than if you're in a couple. I remember traveling
Interesting.
with my husband for years, and we would be sitting in train stations, sometimes waiting for trains and not talk to a soul. But I know if I'm sitting in a train station now on my own, people tend to talk to me.
I've never traveled by myself. I have to say, I travel with my daughter a lot. That's really interesting that you say that, Kelly, because a lot of people, and of course, over the years, I've spoken with people who do travel by themselves and just say it's great because, yeah, you meet so many people, people talk to you, and I mean, you're a warm, friendly person. Why not? Why wouldn't somebody want to chat with you? And I maybe one day, I will get myself on a cruise as a
Mhm.
solo traveler. And yeah, I mean, I don't have any trouble talking to people ever. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I talk too much, I think. Anyway, I think that's really good to know. 'Cause so you don't feel lonely when you're being a solo traveler.
Well, I mean, I would lie if I would say that I never ever feel lonely. I mean, there are some moments when you do. But, certainly cruising is the best way because you're constantly surrounded by people. And,
Hmm.
you have the choice of either going to your room or going out and you will meet people all over the cruise ship. It won't just be in the solo meets. You will meet people at the bar. You will meet people on your excursions. You will meet people at the pool. So I mean, they tend to be really friendly types, people that go on cruises. They tend not to keep themselves to themselves. So you will be able to talk to people nonstop if you want.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe a little bit different if you're traveling not on a cruise because you're getting on and off of trains, you're in hotel rooms by yourself, you're going out sightseeing by yourself. You might, have more tendency to feel lonely in that situation. But personally, I don't really suffer from that at all. I don't ever, when I think about my trips, I don't think, oh, I'm gonna have to be lonely or experience loneliness. I tend to just kind of go out and do it. I don't really go out at night, interestingly enough, when I do the land tours. I basically I might go out for dinner, but I'll have an early dinner and I'm usually back in my hotel room. I mean, I just feel like at my age, I'm not interested in wandering around at night on my own. So
Smart move.
from a safety aspect, I usually have that kind of limitation, but I also, tend to go to bed early too. So,
This is great. Thank you for all of this. Is there any other tips that you can share about being a solo traveler? Things that you've learned, or if someone's thinking about it, okay, this is what you should keep in mind. Anything that you can add to what we've already talked about?
I would say do your research before you go, especially if you're doing a land tour. Spend as much time as you can. The internet is just a wealth of information. Pick the cities you're going to, do some research on the cities, maybe have an idea of where your hotels are in relation to what you want to see. Make sure you're not out in the boonies. Those kind of things that can all be done ahead of time. And for me, it's like some of the most enjoyable part of traveling is doing the research ahead of time. And I'll spend an entire evening on my laptop
Yeah.
and just going through the different cities I'm going to be going to and what I want to see, reading reviews of hotel rooms. I always read the reviews. I think the feedback is really important. And so, yeah, do your research ahead of time and be prepared a little bit. Um, it doesn't take away from the spontaneity of the travel by doing the research ahead of time. It just makes you more educated in the
Right.
places you're going to. Yeah.
Because you're such a seasoned traveler, what can you say is the biggest thing you've learned through this travel experience as a solo traveler?
One of the things I've learned is that there's all different types of people, and I think I'm quite a curious person, and so I find that quite fascinating to meet
Mm,
people from different, walks of life, and yeah, and everybody's got great stories, and if and which from the field you're in,
mhm.
if you just let people tell you their stories, I know you will end up being fascinated by them. And people like to talk about themselves too. So that's the
No
other thing I've
kidding.
learned.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, if you're worried about conversation with somebody, just start asking questions and it will flow.
I would say that's the most important thing I've learned. And yeah, and just the camaraderie, the how you can become quite fast friends quickly
Mhm.
in situations like that and then maintain that friendship. That's really, really exciting.
We do a lot of episodes here on dating and all different aspects of dating and how when you meet somebody, sometimes you just click. But it's exactly the same with regular friendships, isn't it? Some people we
Absolutely.
just click with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it
And
makes your life very full
yeah,
when you
yeah.
have those friendships. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you do you find that you're one of the very few people or only person on the cruise from Vancouver, or do you meet other people that are
No,
also
there's quite a few people from British Columbia and Vancouver, Victoria and uh, places like that as well. But yeah, British Columbia and Canada in general is quite well represented on the cruises.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much for this. This is really fun and I know people, we're all thinking about, I shouldn't say we all, many of us think about travel and where do I want to go and how do I want to travel and can I travel alone? So, you've given us some really good insights into the solo travel adventure, which is fun
Yeah.
and opportunity to meet people, as you say, from all over the world, and where you get the opportunity to be with people as well as being independent. You have both.
hmm hmm And there is really something about being able to wake up first thing in the morning and not have to talk to anybody about what you're planning. You
Yeah.
can
And what are we
just
going to do
do
today?
absolutely your own thing. And
Yeah.
uh, and if you want to take a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, go for it.
Yeah. I'd go for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a luxury sometimes.